Well, welcome everyone. We are back with Thinking Outside the Box. I am Lizette Goodlow, and I'm the co-founder of Behind the Whistle, which is an educational consulting agency for coaches in P through through the P through 16 pipeline. We host conferences in the summer in San Antonio, Texas, because that's where we're based out of right now. And we bring people from various disciplines together. We try to build this strong community to help impact coaches, student athletes, parents, anyone related or involved with people that are working with student athletes. And that's how I met my co-host, Haley Eckerman.
Hi, I'm Haley Eckerman. I am currently the assistant coach at Charleston State University in Stephenville, Texas. I am a former UT Longhorn, and I am also the co-founder of Team Dream, which is the first all African-American team to compete and win USA Open Nationals. And we will have our panel introduce themselves. So we'll start with Johnetta.
Hello, I'm Johnetta Love. I am the director and founder of the Starlings Kansas City, Missouri Volleyball Club. I've been doing that for 4 years. And I guess I started that just because I didn't want the girls to continue to not have. I let my daughter play volleyball one season in club, and the club just was not accepting of her. She was not what they wanted. And even though we paid, the money just like everybody else and we participated, they did not allow her to play. And so I started a club. I went back to school, decided to get my degree and my bachelor's degree in somewhat of coaching. I didn't know really what to get it in. So I got a minor in kinesiology and a bachelor's in communications sports broadcasting. So that's what I did. Started the club and then started seeing more girls come to me that did not understand volleyball or the fact that it was an actual sport. And parents that didn't understand that there was something to do after they played in high school. So that's when I started digging into it and learned more about club and how it all works. And a really good dear friend of mine, Karen, she helped me develop it. So that was me. That's me in a nutshell. So there you go.
Hi, I am Deetra Collins Parker, and I am most recently the former head coach at San Diego State. I am a '88 Olympian, and I played at the University of Hawaii. I formerly sat on the ABCA board as the Minority Coaches Committee Director, and am now founding the Minority Coaches Connection.
Hi, everyone. I'm JP Abercrombie. I am the Assistant Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development at Rice University. Go Owls. I am a former Division I student athlete, not volleyball, but Division I nonetheless. Loved my student athlete experience. And in my capacity overseeing student athlete development, I get to work with all 350 of the student athletes that we have at Rice, really helping them to support their personal, social, and cultural growth and exploration, as well as their professional growth and development. So never a dull moment for me. We were talking about some of that before we started this conversation with everyone. But in addition to that student athlete development capacity, I get to do a lot of alumni engagement, fundraising, diversity and inclusion, which is a good hot topic. So I can't wait to hear what the next panelist has to say about those efforts. And then I also oversee a male sport at Rice. So serving in my capacity, I get to do a lot with campus and our community partners as well. So again, I have a full plate and I love it, but glad to be here.
Hey, also, I'm the last one. So I am Jen Fry. I run Jen Fry Talks. Jen Fry Talks is a social justice firm that focuses on educating and empowering those within athletics through an anti-racist lens. I was a college volleyball coach for about 15 years before
I decided that I wanted to help athletes a little bit more through diversity and inclusion. So from that, I decided, like most normal people do, just to quit my career. And from that, kind of traveled the world, worked in diversity center, traveled the world again, went to a tattoo and beard festival in Sweden, but that's neither here nor there. And then after that, worked at Duke, and then quit again to speak full time on this. I run Gen Phi Talks, so I do speaking engagements on diversity inclusion. I talk a lot about whiteness in athletics and what it means to be white, and work with athletes of color. I'm also doing my PhD full time in geography at Michigan State University. Go Green! And I'm looking at the racial experiences of professional Black volleyball players overseas, and really doing a comparative analysis of what experiences are like, because I think many times we like to think of sport as a big unifier, which it is, but we also don't see how it's a big division in how we treat our athletes, especially our athletes of color, when they're overseas. So I just want to dive deep into that. And this is also Fish right here, so you'll see him having some comments. He's asleep right now, but he'll get a little more talkative in the future.
Well, thank you all. We are so honored to have you all with us. We are going to go ahead and start with Janetta. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we have this recurring theme that we've had over our conversations has been this early exposure to volleyball in communities of color. We see that a lot of the women that we've spoken to have said that if they had learned about volleyball at an earlier age, they would have started playing. And some of the people that we've had on our webinar had started in 8th grade, and some in high school, and they were playing catch up through that 1 year. And then when they went over to club volleyball, they were able to make such a huge jump, sometimes surpassing their classmates, their teammates, their peers. So we have Janetta, and we'd like for you to talk a little bit about Starlings and how that started. And I know you alluded to that a little bit. So if you would just go a little bit deeper about what you do with Starlings.
So with my club, I am kind of the baby club here because I have been only on the scene in Kansas City for 4 years. Kansas City itself is a big club scene, and for the most part, there are clubs that have been in Kansas City for years, 15 or more. And so they've developed and they've built and they've put a name on what they've kind of branded here in Kansas City. So when I was growing up, I went to an inner city school. I went to Harmon, go Hawks. So my coach did not teach us like real volleyball. She taught us, just basic volleyball, walking around. I didn't know how to spike. I barely knew how to pass. All that stuff I had to learn. Even teaching the kids, I didn't know everything. I still had to learn a lot of it. And that was something that I had to do when I went back to college. I went to Avila University, and that's where I learned it at. Loretta, it was McGovern back then, and she's gotten married, but she took me underneath her wings. I walked into her office and I asked her to teach me how to play volleyball because I wanted to learn how to play big girl volleyball. I only knew how to play pass, set, and that was it. That's what I knew how to play. I didn't know how to play pass, set, spike. And she was like, okay. And she told me to try out. And I was 32 years old and I tried out for her college volleyball team. And I played pretty good. I was kind of in shape for a 32-year-old. So she told me, I couldn't play for her, of course, but she took me under her wing and she taught me everything. Whenever I had questions, she would answer them. Whenever I wanted to learn more, she would tell me what it was. I didn't know what a libero was. I was like, I thought that was your setter. And she just started laughing and we'd talk about things and she would just be like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know what a libero was. So just, small things something that I should have known, I didn't know. So and every day I tell her thank you and we talk all the time. And you know, I appreciate the things that she did. And she said, you know, she didn't do it just to be a nice person. She did it because I asked, and she has the knowledge. She's been playing for years, and she knew about club. And I was a basketball player. I wasn't, you know, I coached basketball, I ran track, and that wasn't my first sport. So, you know, that was something that I enjoyed doing afterwards. And once I started the club, when the girls started coming to me, they had no idea how to do any of it. And I just took it in stride. I didn't, you know, yell at them. I didn't fuss with them. I fussed, but it was more like, because I love you, I'm going to fuss with you. Because I want you to learn this, I'm going to fuss with you. And the girls took it, and their parents understood it. And I started my club with 6 girls, one being my daughter, and my youngest, my stepdaughter. My youngest, she was only a 4th grader. And she would try her best to get out there with my older kids all the time. And I was like, get off the court. She thought she was really going to play. So I would have my 4th grader out there, and then my older daughter and the older kids. And then I would only have 6 players. And we would still play, we would still compete. And that was it. That was our first year, 6 players. And by the second year, I had 2 teams. And then the third year, I had a Parks and Rec come in asking me, hey, we want to join with you. We want to help you. We want to be able to join in with you. Let us partner with you. And they wanted to partner with me. And then I had 8 teams, and I had to hire coaches. And then this year, I had less teams because I got rid of Parks and Rec because it wasn't a good connection. I still had to do everything by myself. So I wanted to get away from them having so much control over it because it wasn't genuine control. It was more trying to take over control. And that's not what I was in for it for. I wanted these girls and these parents to honestly understand club volleyball, because that's what Kansas City, Missouri inner city kids are missing. They are completely missing the concept of what club volleyball is. And when I have girls that come to me and they've never passed a ball correctly, or they've never had a ball set to them correctly, and then when they finally get it and they hit it and they swing or they kill or they see that pass or they serve, then that's when I'm really excited about it. Can you hear me? It said it's having technical difficulties.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I thought it said I was having technical difficulties. No? Oh, okay. Okay. Just checking. So that's me. That's what I do. And that's the reason why I did it. And last year I had a lot of girls come to me that had been with me for the last 4 years. And they said, Coach, I want to go play at another club. And I said, you're ready to go play at another club. I want you to go play at another club too, because I don't have that next level skill set for you, because I have so many babies that I have to train up. And I don't feel bad saying that to them. I don't at all. And I tell, you know, other club directors that I know in the club area in Kansas City, I have some girls that are ready to move to that next level. Will you accept them? But you have to know these girls don't have money. These girls have, you know, these problems. These girls have that problem. But they're ready for club now because I've taught them and I've taught their families and they understand club. But I can't teach them that next level because I'm teaching the babies how to be, even though they're in high school and they're in 8th grade, they're in, you know, they're getting ready to graduate. I'm teaching them how to play volleyball, and I don't want to take that away from them. You know, I don't want to take my skill that I have away from the girls right now. Not right now. I feel like I'm doing this for some reason. There's a reason that my club is the way that it is, and I only have the girls that are learning and not advancing, because they're supposed to go out and like fly. And that's like totally what the slogan is for the Starlings, spread your wings. And that's what my girls do. After I've taught them how to build and learn, they spread their wings and they fly and they go and do something else. So I really enjoy it, and the Starlings have been right behind me the whole time, helping me with everything. Anything I need, I email and let them know what's going on, what troubles I'm having. They're right behind me. They give me what I need. They find the help that I need. Anytime I get lost in the transition of anything, because I've grown so fast, it was really quick for me to grow. And they said, if when that transition happens, just call them and they'll help me with that transition. And they have. And that was one thing I was afraid of, that they wouldn't be there. And the true Starlings volleyball coaches, the true ones, will help you. The ones that are not truly Starlings volleyball coaches and are just using that name will not. And I've learned that just from like being there and talking to the ones that are truly Starlings volleyball coaches and directors.
Now, Janetta, can you tell us a little bit about, some of our listeners may not be familiar with what the Starlings organization, where it started, and how, because you keep referring to them helping you, how they help you in Kansas City?
So the Starlings organization is based out of California. And what they do is, in the beginning, what I did was email the Starlings organization and said I wanted to start a club. And what they did was give me their, like, a tax number or something. And they said, use this, start your club, and anything that you need to start the club, you call us and then we'll help you build that platform. So what I am is like an umbrella of the Starlings. But so like any fundraising and things like that, I'm under them, but then it's for my club, so to speak. I guess that's how you explain it. But then if right now, last year, they brought on what is called sister clubs. So like within Kansas City, there's like bigger clubs. So one of them, for example, is Dynasty. It's one of the biggest clubs here in Kansas City for me anyway, that I know of. And if Dynasty, which they did, when I first started, Dynasty came to me and handed me 6 balls and said, because you're a Starlings volleyball club, I want to be your helper. Whatever you need, when you need it, just call me. And if I can help you, I will help you. And that's like my sister club. And then they're going to connect with Starlings, and somehow if things go crazy with me and my club, they'll pull me out of the crazy. So that would be like my sister club. So it's local and something to go to if I go awry.
Well, thank you, Janetta, for sharing that. And I don't think enough people know about the Starlings. And so we'll be sure to get that information out. You guys will get an email from all of us with information. And there's a website that you can find wherever you're located, the Starlings that are located there. So now we have Deetra Collins-Parker, a former Olympian and collegiate volleyball coach. And we met Deetra through our mutual friends that we've all realized that everybody on this panel has known, Miss Monique AJ Smith. We shout out to you if you're on here. And so we'll let Deetra kind of explain what she is doing with the Minority Coaches Connection.
Awesome, thank you. First, I want to say, Janetta, kudos to you for laying a foundation and then encouraging them to go on to bigger clubs and continue to broaden their opportunities to go on and play at whatever the highest level is for them. So I think that's awesome. And it kind of leads into kind of what I want, is to laying a foundation for coaches, for all minority coaches. Going back a little bit, when I started playing way back in the day, we were lucky if we had more than one minority player on a team. And there were minority male coaches, meaning minority but not Black. I couldn't name a Black volleyball coach coming up. And so to think about going into the field of coaching, it just kind of fell on me. It was not something that I ever thought about doing, probably most likely because I didn't see anybody that looked like me doing it. And now it's so awesome to see how our sport has definitely become a more diverse sport. Even though we're still considered a white sport, we're definitely more diverse than ever. The one thing that, the opportunity that I had in the past is I got on the AVCA board as the minority coaches representative. And with that, we put programming in place at the AVCA convention each year, and Jen was a part of my committee on that. And each year we would bring in a certain number of young coaches. We would kind of put it out there and give them a chance to apply. We would pick a certain number of coaches and we would bring them to the convention wherever it was that year. And our goal during our 2 days that we had them before the actual convention started was to educate. And we wanted to be a resource to young female minorities that wanted to be collegiate coaches, or either that were new collegiate coaches, or they could be college seniors coming out, they could be assistant coaches wanting to move up. And our goal during that time was to educate in a way that was more specific to being a minority coach. So you could go to the convention and learn, but with this one, we knew that not everybody could afford to go to the convention at that time, depending on where you were. So we provided a scholarship. We provided them the opportunity to come in. We would bring in speakers of all different areas to educate in kind of all areas that we could that had to do with coaching collegiately, and giving advice on how to move up in the ranks. The people you needed to know how to present yourself at the convention to other people that may someday hire you. And we felt like it was just a great way to continue to connect and grow the minority coaching world in volleyball. We also had the opportunity to take some of those talents to do clinics for free because we had the funding from the NCAA to do clinics with that. We do a clinic at the convention, and the way that I met Monique is we were actually doing a minority coaches clinic at North Carolina A&T, and Monique was the athletic director there at the time. And so we went in and we would do free clinics and allow coaches to watch. We'd have players there and we would teach the sport kind of at a grassroots level. Again, just doing our best to educate minorities to the sport of volleyball and to the field of coaching. Where I am now, although I still kind of plan to get back into collegiate coaching, I also, though, see the need to continue to put something out there for our minority coaches to be able to connect. And obviously this is a great time right now where we're really feeling some kind of way being a minority, period, being a minority in life, being Black in life, but more importantly, being a Black person, being a minority in a white sport. And what I want to provide is an opportunity for us to connect and grow in a way that we see fit. And we're going to send out a survey to get an idea of how you feel you can best be served as a minority in the sport of volleyball. What would a minority coaching connection do for you? What could be provided to you that could make this connection be worthwhile? Whether it's educating, whether it's coming in and helping somebody like Janetta, build her program, doing free clinics. We just want to connect and provide a service to all of those that are interested in being connected as a minority group. And so that's a kind of a challenge I'm putting out there to you, and that we want you to fill out the survey, let us know what you're interested in and how this minority coaching connection can help you grow in the field of coaching in volleyball. I believe Haley will put in the chat my email and contact information. If you want to talk to me directly, I'd love to talk with you. Love to see who's on board to want to help grow that as well. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm starting that I want people to be excited about and want to see that we have a way to reach out. I've been really fortunate to get to work with Lizette and Haley to this point already to just be able to talk, you know, just to have a safe place that us as young coaches, I'm not young, but some of y'all are, but as a coaching community, to be able to go and say, hey, this is where I'm struggling. Yeah, I'm the only Black person in the athletic department, and that is very real. And how do I navigate that? I haven't been around any Black people playing the sport or whatever that situation is. I feel like there's a big, vast hole there that we can fill as a group. And that's where I want to step in and be truly helpful. That's where my passion lies. My passion absolutely is coaching. I love coaching athletes. I am so appreciative of the opportunities that I had as a student athlete, as an Olympic athlete, as a professional athlete. I am 100% convinced that I would have never seen the world like I have had I not played volleyball. And with that, my mission as a coach was to provide that to my athletes. My mission on the Minority Coaches Connection, on the Minority Coaches Committee, is to provide that for other people to be able to pass that on. We want to grow this sport to the point where it's not always going to be the white sport. There's enough of us that can play the sport well. There's enough of us that are leaders that can bring up others to be able to play the sport, to teach the sport, but we're going to have to work together to continue to grow that so we can get that title off of it being the predominantly white sport, because we know that we can excel in this. And so I'm just challenging each and every one of you to want to partner with me to grow this Minority Coaches Connection. So that's what I have to say.
Well, thank you, Deetra. I think, like she said earlier, Monique is the one that connected us. So shout out, Monique. We love you. We appreciate you supporting us in everything that all of us are doing. So if you have the need, you want to connect with Deetra, she's not only a seasoned coach that can teach you the X's and O's, but can connect you with other people as well within the volleyball community. So with that said, we're going to move on with JP Abercrombie, and she is a phenomenal leader in the industry. She is so supportive of other women and has continued to be a mentor for me. I reached out to her via email one time, and we started our relationship at that point. So I'm so thankful for her. Now we have a couple questions for you, JP, that we'd like for you to answer. The first one, just kind of tell us what you're doing over at Rice and how you've made some changes since you've been there.
Yeah, well, one, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. Again, shout out to Monique for connecting all of us. But I think one thing that also ties us is, aside from the obvious of being minority leaders and being women in that, is sport and our love for that. And I think also our passion to continue to pay all of the great opportunities that we had to pay them forward. So, you know, when it comes to what am I doing at Rice, I think it starts with just that notion, the opportunity to pay it forward. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a former Division I student athlete myself. Loved my student athlete experience. It's funny to think about where I am now being a Texan. I feel like I can claim that now that I have a driver's license and license plate and all that fun stuff. But little JP wouldn't have thought of that. I'm actually from California originally, grew up in the Midwest, so lots of connections here to our other panelists through that. But I decided that I was born on the West Coast, grew up in the Midwest, and had family in the South. So the only logical place for me to go to college was the Northeast. And that was a really good opportunity for me to figure out who I wanted to be. Had a great student athlete experience and really learned about the power of my voice, particularly through my involvement in SAC. And really got to study SAC at the institutional level, the conference level, and then also work with them on a national front, which fueled my master's research when I went to grad school. After my time on the Northeast, I went back to the other coast, the West Coast, and did some time at UC Berkeley, working in a similar capacity to the one that I have today. And that really laid a foundation for me to be able to pay it forward to student athletes. So, you know, working with 950 student athletes out there, my previous institution, I had about 450, 550 at an SEC school. And I mentioned earlier that I have 350 at Rice. So I love being in that smaller, more intimate environment, more of an academically aligned school, obviously still Division I, and being able to really just combine the best of all of those scenarios. And so for me, access to education, access to opportunities are what I think is really important. And so I love, Janetta, what you were saying about flying. Again, owls, that's me all through and through. Our student athlete development program is called SOAR, and it stands for Student Athlete Opportunities for Advancement through Rice Values. I think in order to get into Rice, you are a special kind of person, maybe a special kind of student for sure, being able to handle the rigor there. But my goal is to really see how I can meet you where you are and help you get where you're trying to go. How can I advance you? How can I inspire, empower, and equip you to become that person that you want to be? So through our SOAR, Student Athlete Development Program, it's about positioning our students to prosper and equipping them to soar. So taking that flight to the next level. I really get to focus on the personal development programs, leadership assessments, values assessments, financial literacy programs, things of that nature, but then also the professional preparation. So resume writing, mock interviews, your professional presence, internships, job opportunities, things of that nature. And then supporting all of our students as they transition in, through, and beyond the collegiate student athlete experience. So I also get to do some of our alumni engagement, as I said earlier. And when it comes to specifically what that looks like at Rice, or how my presence has helped transform the role, I think I'm gonna lean on what Deetra was sharing a little bit in terms of being a minority. I am the only Black female administrator, really on a track to being a department head. I'm also the only female department head within our team. Jen, I see your face. And, you know, we do have other women on our senior leadership team. I'm the only Black woman on our senior leadership team. So the only, like that keeps coming up. And I don't want to downplay that at all, but I think given where we are today in society, in the world, that perspective is so valuable. And, you know, I think for me, having been a student athlete or a product of predominantly white institutions my entire life, again, this is another level of me being able to show up with my experiences and pay it forward, because I want my student athletes to see themselves in those roles. You know, some people have asked me if I ever thought about being an athletic director, and prior to where I am today, you know, I didn't know that people who looked like me or who came from places that I came from could be an athletic director. That wasn't visible, that wasn't accessible. I didn't know that that was a path. And in all honesty, I didn't know you could work in college athletics until I was a sophomore in college. Don't ask me what happened my freshman year, just, I was adjusting. So, you know, I have this dual role of, yeah, I have this very important role in terms of job responsibilities, but I think who I am is what Rice needed on so many different levels. The sass that I bring in every situation, you know, I'm also that person that will wear blue lipstick, black lipstick, gray lipstick on game day. You will hear me before you see me. I'm coming with the energy. I have student athletes who have assigned seats for me at their venues. And if I'm not there by the time the game starts, I'm gonna hear about it. I'm like, why are y'all paying attention to where I'm okay, whatever, that's a conversation for another day. But I will be their biggest cheerleader in competition, but also in life. And I think for me, being able to be visible and accessible to them in all of those different areas just furthers that trust, but also helps them maximize their experience. Again, I loved my student athlete experience, and I want nothing more than to be able to pay that forward for the student athletes today. I can't look at Jen, can't trust her. She's a little crazy, we special. We'll bring the picture back of us.
Teacher told me my arrow was wrong. Which way does my arrow need to go then for boss? It needs to go this way because my screen's different. So I'm gonna cover this part up and put the arrow towards the boss that way.
But being that I have the seats that I have, you know, I think it's really important for me to continue to reach across the aisle, reach back, reach forward, whatever that may be, not only for my student athletes, but also for the coaches. I often end up being the one administrator or the one of administrators for my coaching staff, and then it can also be a liaison to campus. And I think that's really important for me in terms of being able to support our student athletes and our coaches as well, reaching outside the athletic department, making sure that as a campus community, we're really fostering the environment that we preach about, that culture of care that we talk about, and in general, just being a chief accountability officer. That's something that's really important to me. If I tell you about it, I'm going to do it. Best believe I'm going to figure it out. And just being able to surround myself with people like Jen, who hold me accountable on so many different levels. But yeah, I think that's my story in a nutshell. So what else do you have for me?
Well, one question that was sent to us earlier today is, what are some things that athletic departments can do to dismantle systems or patterns of racism being experienced by student athletes, specifically volleyball players?
That's a great question. I was actually talking to my AD last week, and yeah, to hear my story on a personal level, but I think the dismantling of systemic oppression or systemic racism, I would also add sexism to that list when we start talking about the female student athlete experience. And the one candid moment that we had in that conversation was, I was like, allow me to introduce you to a subtle dismantling of systemic or oppression, systemic racism, systemic sexism. My name. I can't tell y'all how many times I have been referred to as that white male. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, yeah, I'm the JP that you thought you were dealing with. That's me on a personal level. I think when it comes to our student athletes and their experience, the first thing I would say is engage with them. Talk to them like people, not just athletes. If you only know your student athlete stats when they're winning you conference championships, shame on you. If you don't know where they come from, what they're interested in, but you did when they were on the recruiting process, we have to do better. I think being open and willing to engage in dialogue with them, but the next piece of that is just to listen. I think back on my student athlete experience, and my experience as a student athlete fuels a lot of what I do and who I am and how I show up in these spaces today. I'm thankful that my institution surrounded me with people who challenged me to think critically about the position that I wanted to hold, not only on that campus, but in life. I had people ask me difficult questions, and I didn't always know the answer. And that was hard for me as the type of person that I am to not know the answer, but it fueled me to go figure it out. And so I would encourage administrators and even your coaches to be active participants in your students' lives beyond their product on the court. I think when it comes to the female student athlete experience in particular, there shouldn't be a drop off between your male and female student athlete experience. If we start to prioritize sport identities or various athlete identities, you're only furthering that student athlete moniker, furthering the divide between the way that the students identify themselves. And so I would encourage you to have that dialogue with them, figure out what's important for them, to them, but then also cast a vision for them that's bigger than their sport, that's bigger than what they may see right in front of their face. For me, it's really important to think about access and accessibility and understand that just because your students are students of your institution, your student athletes are students of your institution, they may not know how to deal with all of the resources, opportunities that are available to them. So how do you truly make sure that it goes beyond just having access, but that those things are woven into the student athlete experience, that they're truly accessible? For example, if you have a center for career development or a career center on your campus, it's not enough to just say, oh, go write your resume over there, they'll help you. With their schedule, is it truly accessible for them to be able to go over there, take advantage of that programming? And if it's not, how do you weave that into their experience? How do you craft an experience or cultivate opportunities for them that are more than just their sport? And I think the way that we talk to our student athletes helps them identify with who they are and how they can be perceived. It also helps them figure or envision opportunities that are bigger than the current circumstance. So again, I think it all comes down to communication, but I would encourage all administrators to engage with their students more.
Thank you, JP. That was, that's great. And it's good hearing it from someone who's in the admin. We as coaches, we ask each other all these things, but then we never really know how to hear it because, like you said, we don't see very many of us in there. So next we're going to kind of transition into Miss Jen Fry. So obviously, if you don't know, Jen Fry is a very outspoken woman in the volleyball community. She's one of all of our dear friends. Jen Fry Talks, social injustice education firm, just continuing to educate and empower athletics through an anti-racist lens. So we'll have her kind of share some stuff, and then we've got a couple questions for you, Jen.
Okay. So I think, I will actually kind of jump on to JP's answer. I will give a more radical one, and that is you need to talk about whiteness and white supremacy. Like, if you want to dismantle oppressions, you have to talk about what's oppressing. And I think so many times people aren't going to talk about what's oppressing because the oppressors are 80% of the C-suite, of the administration, of the supervisors, of the coaches, of the. And so it's really hard to talk about those who are oppressing about how they're oppressing. And so, like, the talks I've had with people, especially around these issues, and they're always like, we want to talk to our team. How do we talk to it? I'm like, well, talk about whiteness. What? How can we talk about whiteness? That makes sense. Well, that's the problem. You want to talk about race, but you want to talk about blackness. You can't talk about blackness until you've learned about whiteness. And you haven't learned about whiteness unless you've critically thought about yourself and how you are interacting with people, especially people of color. So to dismantle systems, you have to talk about the systems openly and honestly. And so to me, that's one of the biggest things that I talk about is I'm lucky enough that this is my company. So if you want to talk to the boss, it's either me or Fish. Well, I could put him on the phone. He's got a great phone voice. But like you could talk to my manager. He got a tail. It is what it is. And so, but like the reality is we have to talk openly about these systems, and a lot of white people are very uncomfortable talking about systems. And so that's what I do within my my job is on a consistent day. I'm talking about racism, whiteness, oppression, all these really hard topics that people do not want to talk about and feel super, super uncomfortable talking about, and try and make them, when I do talk about, at least a little more comfortable talking about uncomfortable and talking about the elephant in the room. Because many times when people talk about racism, they don't talk about how uncomfortable, guilty, shameful it feels. They just talk about it as this very vague term versus talking about the emotions and feelings that are attached with it. Is that, like, if you're talking about racism and you're white, you're going to feel guilt and shame, and that's okay. You have to move through that. So that's a lot of what I talk about. My PhD project is looking at the racial experiences of professional Black volleyball players overseas. And so I really want to take a real analysis of what their experiences are, because I want people to know that what's happening here is also happening over there in any continent, and it just looks differently. And we have to name what it looks like, especially to our future Black volleyball players who want to go overseas to play. We have to prepare them. It's unfair to send kids to these areas and they don't know what's going to happen, and then they don't ever want to play again. And so we have to prepare them and say, if you're going to go and play in this town, this is what you have to know. And you can decide if you want to or not, but you need to at least know this stuff. Versus they're learning about this racism that they're having to deal with all the time. They're playing on a team that now, if they don't play well, they're getting cut, and now they got to figure a way home. So I really want to help them understand what they're going to be, dealing with, to prepare them. I just feel like it's kindness. Like, you have to prepare people for what's going on. And so that's what I do my research on. I really look at also like analysis of racial experiences of volleyball players per conference. Like, what does it look like to be in the Pac-12 or the Big Ten or the SEC? What are those experiences like? Because if you're in Seattle, it's getting different than if you're at the University of Florida, if you're at the University of Texas. Don't we have a Texan here? I don't know, we might. So yeah, so it's gonna it's gonna differ in so many ways, and we have to acknowledge that. And some people don't acknowledge it. Yes, sport is a great unifier, but also we don't look at how it divides and how it hurts our Black athletes. So that's what I look at. And my research project right now is I'm doing I'm doing my PhD in geography, and so I'm doing like a summer map on kind of a professional volleyball hotspot map throughout the world, and looking at where do volleyball players play. I'm trying to go a little more in depth and look at like names, years, clubs, and really to see, also where are most Black athletes playing, because that's also a good indicator of maybe where athletes should look at playing. So that's all I got. I'm not smooth like JP.
So one of the questions, and this is kind of what you're known for more in the volleyball world, but how does racism and white privilege show up in volleyball, whether it's club or college or national team? kind of explain that a little bit more to the audience?
I think first, it's how in depth we have to go to validate our experiences. We cannot just say this happened, because if we say X happened, it's like, well, are you sure when you got pulled over there wasn't a light out? Are you sure maybe you didn't do a rolling stop? Are you sure? Are you sure? I just highly doubt. So we have to give so much specific information to validate our experience. It can't be that this experience just happened to us. Everything has to be validated. Anything around race has to be validated times 15. And we see that with these police shootings. It's like Walter Scott was running away. The cop shot him in the back and placed the gun around. But wait, what did he do before he was running away and his back was facing the cop? Like, he had to have maybe like spit over his shoulder and it hit the cop, and that's why the cop shot him dead. And so we see where these like videos are showing stuff, and it has to be consistently validated, because our experiences, they just sound like they can exist, but they do exist. And so I think when we talk about an aspect of racism in volleyball, it's acknowledging that our Black athletes, when they tell these white coaches about their experiences, they're not believed. Or it's like, well, she didn't mean it that way. She's a good girl. And because of that, then the situation is that they're not going to tell coaches anything. And you have these athletes that are going through stuff and they're not saying anything. And if you hear the coach talk, the coach is like, nothing's going on. I don't hear of anything. Forgetting the one time that they did try and say something, they weren't validated. And so it looks like that. It looks like these consistent microaggressions for these young ladies that people feel like it's good intent. Well, I just wanted to touch her hair. Well, I just said she speaks white. I mean, what's wrong with saying that? I just asked where she's from. I didn't mean any harm. And then when people are talked to about their problematic behavior, white athletes or coaches, they get the victimization, the defense, the crying, and now these athletes don't want to say anything. And so it really is this idea of A, people need to start validating our experiences. B, there needs to be consequences when kids are singing the N-word, when they're saying microaggressions. There needs to be intense education of people in power. So many times I'm hearing of, we need to educate our athletes. No, we need to educate those in power, because if we don't educate those in power, the athletes aren't going to do it. You think that they don't see their coach watching a video during a diversity inclusion workshop? You don't think that they see their coaches doing this and doing that when they expect their athletes to have their phones down? The coaches forget how much of a role model they are. And if you're not role modeling it, then you're role modeling something. And so that's why I consistently see it's the idea that, Black people are always from single families or from poor families, or that they got into these schools because of their athletic ability, not their grades, as if white people haven't gotten into schools because of other things other than grades and athleticism, but it's because of money, legacies. I mean, if you look, I think it was like Yale or Harvard, it was like 14% of the freshman class came in as legacy students, but we don't challenge or critically think about what that means. And so I think it's like thinking about those small things of how we can validate experiences and start having heavy consequences for athletes or coaches that say certain things. I mean, we're seeing coaches, it's coming out, well, my coach said this or that, and nothing occurred. And so when you as a coach are known to say something and nothing occurs, your athletes are going to do the same thing. And so it's really critical that if administrators want to see change, they hold themselves accountable and then they hold those coaches accountable.
So we have a question in the chat box, and Jen, you can answer this. Is it possible to establish a pathways program for minority communities and programs, high school or club, to provide an opportunity for players who have a late start in being exposed to volleyball? And then she says the recruitment process, questionnaires, and speakers in itself traditionally discourage the student athlete from pursuing the next level.
I mean, I think, yes, we can. It depends on if, clubs want to. I mean, I think Lizette, Deetra, or Jenna would be better to speak about this, but I think we can. I think it just means that people have to understand that some aspects of their club business are not going to be money making. I think it also is community colleges getting more entrenched with the club. I literally, you want to talk about late, I think I signed like the second semester of my senior year. I had no clue what I was going to do. My college coach happened to be my club coach. And she was like, you want to come play for me? And I was like, okay, I don't even know what that means. And so that's literally how I played. But I think if community college connected more with clubs and somehow built a pipeline that way and also got more minority athletes into the club and knowing about community colleges, I think that could help. Because I mean, so many community colleges have a bad name, and I just don't understand why. Because I know that there are so many athletes that would be way better at community college to get prepared, to play for 2 years and then transfer to a college, versus going to this 4 year and they don't play and they get upset and then want to leave. And so I think that community colleges need to be thought of as a more viable option for minority student athletes, and not as a situation of you're less than, but it allows you to play more. And that's really what you need. When you're young, when you're inexperienced, you need to touch the ball and play as much as possible. And community colleges will help you do that, because there's NJCAA Division 1 through 3. Division 1 offers full scholarships, all the way to Division 3, I think, is no scholarship. So there's the ability for you just to play. And because, you know, community colleges be having like 80 matches in a season. Like people's arms falling off, like fingers looking like this. Like they play so many matches. I was like, yo, our record was like 64-15. How we play that many matches in 4 months? Like that don't even make sense. But like that's what you do, and you need to just play, all of that type of stuff. Oh yeah, and Dietrich said, yeah, junior colleges don't offer athletic aid, so go and contact them. And plus, like, what California JUCOs are what, like $250 a semester or something? Like they super cheap.
It is very inexpensive, but they're not part of the NJCAA,
Yes.
so they're a whole different entity, but very high level volleyball at times.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, when she says that, like the way that I run my program, if a community college was kind of connected with like somebody like myself, and they kind of got to know the kids that I deal with, and kind of came in and like ran a clinic with me or ran beside me, one-on-one with me, they'll get to see my kids. They're gonna see what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with, you know, real city kids that are not touching balls. When they go back to their program in August, they haven't touched a ball since my club season. When they start their program in August, they're still not going to touch a ball because their coach is the basketball coach or the gym teacher or the library teacher or some parent or some random person, and nobody wants to put the budget in to hire a real coach. And when you mention it to them, they say they don't have the money for it, for a real coach, but then they want to be competitive and they throw it into another sport or they throw it into something else, and they say that volleyball is not important. But if I have that community college coach helping me alongside, then they see what that athlete has. It doesn't matter if they don't have a fall season. They don't need a fall season. We can run conditioning during their fall season and then run a club season. So, I mean, that way they don't have to miss out on anything, and then they can do that community college. That's the best way for the community colleges to actually get in good with club, so that they're not missing girls, and especially in the city, because those girls, they want to play, but they want to play D1. They want to play D3. They want to play at the big schools. They don't want to play at the community colleges because they don't think that that's real, anything real. But if the community colleges show their face and put themselves in that spot where they want to pick these girls, then I think that they would get that opportunity.
Well, I'm gonna jump in also with what Jen was saying and what Janetta was saying. As a former high school coach in the state of Texas, and working at a Title I school, where inner city, where we're playing it in a district where all of the top 6 teams in the district have kids that are playing club, and the top 4, every single athlete is playing club volleyball. Where I'm sitting at a school where maybe 1 or 2 are playing club, and they just started playing club as a freshman in a mom and pop club, that there's no way that they can compete. But they do, with a couple of years of experience at the junior college, they could develop a little bit more because they're playing so many games. And a lot of times that's all it boils down to, is them being exposed and playing more and more and more to gain that volleyball knowledge so that they can play at the next level. So it's a battle that we continue to fight in, you know, in the inner city and in some of the smaller school districts in the state of Texas. But even like our previous webinar participants stated, even in the hotbed in the DFW, where we have DeSoto and Cedar Hill and South Oak Cliff and Lancaster, some of those young women in that area aren't playing volleyball until they get into high school, and they've been playing basketball this whole time. And by that point, it's almost too late, because the basketball coaches says, no, we're not going to let you play volleyball, even though they could get a full ride scholarship to play college volleyball and go to school for free through volleyball versus basketball. So I think we've got to do a better job as volleyball coaches in getting into the communities early on and having those clinics. And I know sometimes it has to deal with, you know, the financial burden that we all have to, I mean, that our kids have to face. And sometimes those things just have to be for free. And we have to find people that are willing to give back to our communities and help our kids, because that's what it's about. Well, I want to say thank you all to everyone that's helped participate in our webinar series. This is the third one that we've had that Haley and I kind of put together. Our next one is on July 2nd, and I know we're getting closer to that rollout for a new normal for our volleyball kids to be back on campus. So our next webinar is going to include some mental health professionals, some social workers, some strength coaches that are going to talk about how we need to get our minds, our bodies, and our spirit back into the swing of things, because some of our kids are going to come back and they've gone through some trauma. This whole thing has been a traumatic experience for all of us, even just being in quarantine for this long. So I encourage everyone to join us on July 2nd for our next conversation. And then Haley's got a couple words as well.
Yes. So to all the coaches that are on here, thank you for, you know, all that you do. We would like to invite you to our call on Saturday at 5 p.m. Central. And if you follow on Think Outside the Box, or we'll shoot an email out to those coaches, and you can reach out to us if you would like the link. We've created a safe space for coaches to talk about how you're feeling, what your plan is to help your athletes. We're going to kind of be talking about what the Texas student athletes have been doing, and kind of what's the next step and how do we move forward. We will also have mental health professionals on that call too, to provide support and resources. And so you can email, I'm gonna get this right, totbox20@gmail.com, and we will get you that link for that if you want. And the same with all social medias, totbox20. And, you know, we'll see you next time, and continue to think outside the box.